Sure. Let me answer that first.
Okay.
I'll forget the second question.
That's fine.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Well, again, it's done by the planning board. The typical process is that some issue will arise. Either the planning board themselves will initiate a review of the master plan. Most of the elements over the last few years I have prepared. There have been a few where we've had consultants come in. As before, again, we mentioned the park needs because there was a particular need for an outside specialist. Usually during work sessions of the planning board, the issue will be discussed. Drafts of the master plan document will be prepared. When it is essentially in a format that the planning board is ready. Well, first of all the meetings are public, so all the meetings the public is allowed to participate. But when it's basically ready for adoption, then the planning board has to have a hearing. And there's notice requirements, again, coming from the municipal land use law, include notifying the clerks of adjoining municipalities, sending a copy of the plan to the county planning board. There is a hearing. The draft is presented to the public and to the planning board. There is question and answer from the public. And if the plan is in good shape, it is adopted then. If there needs to be revisions, it could go through a few more revisions before it's adopted. And then after it's adopted, it's by law again has to be sent to the county planning board, and we put it up on the township website so the public can review it.
And so the county has to approve it before?
No.
Or just review it?
They need to be made aware of it, and they need to be given a copy of it in its draft form, and after it's adopted, they need to get the final version, adopted version.
Okay. And I guess the final step is the council.
Yeah, there's no formal step for the council, but we do have, the council does have a land use committee that I sit with. There's also a council representative on the planning board, so the council is well aware of when things are changed to the master plan. The council is made aware.
Okay, great, thank you. That really helps. I appreciate that. And my second question, which was partially answered.
Very quickly. My
time is up. And I will take that at the end if my time is up. But basically, I wanted to know who are the, if there are any additional stakeholders. In my mind, I cannot imagine a master plan being developed without asking the economic development director or the business community, or you said the public is already, there are a lot of, and that was my initial question, like at which point does the public participate in this? But you explained that. So are these other stakeholders, like the business community, the economic development people, the Chamber of Commerce, or any other people that have a stake in how the township is shaped?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it varies depending on the topic. Obviously, if it's, not sure I can say obviously, but if it's the Parks and or if it's the historic element, well, we're really looking to the Historic Commission for their input. Trails, we're looking to trails. We may not be looking to the Chamber of Commerce for a trails plan.
Of course.
So we have over the years made different levels of outreach, frankly, depending on what the topic is and who, who we feel the stakeholders might be for that, particular area or for that particular topic.
Thank you very much. Sure. Thank you.
Benjamin Guy, 35 Patton Drive. I just want to ask a couple questions real quick. Zoning restrictions by ward. Do we have a specific map that we can actually publish that that's actually out there that actually participants in the audience can see, because a lot of times they don't understand what they can actually see and what they cannot see. And we can wait till you guys answer at the end, because I got a couple of questions I would like to get through first. So zoning restrictions by ward, because I'll give an example. Fourth Ward is a little densely populated more than others. And I think first and second ward, you can't do certain developments in there because of restrictions and when they were adopted during the time frame. So
Not true.
okay, it's not true, but
No, zoning's not done by ward, it's done by zone.
it's done by zone, but it's adopted. Each one of us live in different different wards.
It's
right?
not adopted by wards. Wards, Mr. Vornlocker, is that correct?
No, that's correct. The zone.
So can we pause? Wait. Can we pause the time? Can we pause the time? Because
No, but the question
we
is-
can answer. You can answer. at the end.
Mr. Guy has the...
Because we're restricted
Go
time,
ahead.
you just cut two people off. So, open space recommendations, being that this is a policy document, right? And we make open space recommendations. How is that enforced based on, because it's just recommendations that are actually there? Because we're dealing with a policy, not law. So how do we enforce these things? Y'all can answer later on altogether. So, and then adopting this 10-year plans on what it is, I will ask Mr. Healy how long he's been here altogether and how many meetings he has adopted so that we understand exactly where historical preference when these things get initiated. Like a lot of people are upset because of, example is the warehouses that are going on. Was Mr. Healy here during the time frame when it first started to get adopted? Was that one of the things that's here? Because we need to know the historical preference when things are getting adopted here. Amendments that actually go on with it. Why is that not presented to the town council openly so that the people are aware of what's going on in the town, so that we're proactive rather than reactive on a regular basis? And then also, when we apply for other things that we're adopting in here, whether or not it's densely populated houses are being built in certain areas or anything else, why is that not publicly put out there to the public so that the public is aware? Because we're dealing with traffic patterns in our cities at all. So again, just being proactive rather than reactive about what goes on here. And then the last portion is what's the county and state involvement as far as when we plan these things? Because we deal with a lot of city and county roads, whether or not it's Eastern Avenue, Route 27, or anything else that goes on here, and we share these roadways with against other counties. How is that impacted based on our planning? Thank you.
So let us answer the questions. Mark, you want to get some, and
I'll
Go for it.
answer as many. I was trying to take notes. So as far, I think you had a question about the open space recommendations and how is that implemented?
Mr. Guy, your time's up, so you can sit
I
down.
can be here and listen just in case he says something.
No, you can
No,
sit
you can
down.
have- you can have a seat.
I'll stand.
Mr. Guy, please have a seat.
I'll stand.
Mr. Guy, please have a seat.
Don't disrupt the meeting, please.
Wait, you guys disrupt the meeting all the time. You interrupted me before.
Mr. Guy,
Guy,
please don't
please have a
disrupt the
seat.
meeting.
So I think I used that as an example before, as far as, Mr. Guy asked a question about open space recommendations and it being a policy in the planning documents, and I use that as an example where whether it's our agricultural advisory committee, the open space committee may make recommendations on what properties should be preserved, whether it should be open space preservation or farm preservation. That gets incorporated into our plans. And then the council has the ability and has preserved, I think 34% of the township is preserved. So whether it's in the use of township open space funds or partnering with the county and or the state to preserve properties, that's how that has occurred. It's recommended in the plans, and then the council implements that through, again, either allowing the use of the township's open space funds or putting that into a bundle of your state and or county funds to save those properties or preserve those properties.
And in both of those cases, the agricultural preservation and the open space preservation by ordinance created by the Township Council many years ago are the two advisory committees that give advice and are comprised of residents and staff members both who then make recommendations to the Township Council on what properties should be preserved, either as farmland preservation or open space preservation. Going back to the first question about zones, and I think what Councilman Vasanella was trying to insert into that conversation, and it is absolutely correct, wards have nothing to do with zones at all. Zones are in many cases exist in all 5 wards, depending on the type of zone that it is. For instance, the R10 zone, which is a 10,000 square foot residential lot, that zone exists, I believe, in all 5 wards of the township. However, the Hamilton Street Business District only exists in 2 wards, the 4th and 5th. The M3 zone only exists in 1 ward, the 1st ward, because M3 is mining, and we only have 1 mining operation in Franklin Township. R40, I believe, exists in all 5 wards, as does R20. The BI zone exists in, I believe, 3 wards, the 2nd ward and the 4th ward, and I think it might touch the 3rd ward in the Hamilton Street, Clyde Road area. So the answer is wards are political, and they define by population the division of the town into 5 to account for the 5 ward council members that are dictated by the type of government Franklin Township has, and has nothing to do with zoning. That's the question about zones and wards.
And I wrote down the other questions if you need help.
Yeah, and I have 2 more. So one, there was the question about the council, the presentation of the master plan in a public setting, and he had mentioned the township council. Well, as I said before, all the planning board meetings, just like the council, are open to the public. All of them are just like this. They are held in this council chambers. They are recorded, and they're on the cable stations. They are put on YouTube. The public can participate in the planning board just as much as they can before the council. So there's ample opportunity when there are master plan changes. There's ample opportunity for the public to become made aware of what those changes are, and to express their opinion on those changes to the planning board. And then I think you also had a question about, Bob, can you scroll just a little bit, just so that whole page can, about the number of updates, or whether there has been updates. I thought maybe there was, he was alluding to that maybe we didn't update it, or we only did it every 10 years. At least that's the sense I got. But what this is basically showing is 2006 was when it was updated on a comprehensive basis. We did, again, a comprehensive re-examination 10 years later, but in between that, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2012, 2013, 2015, in all of these, housing element, I mentioned that was updated 3 times, historic preservation plan, farmland preservation plan 3 times, environmental resource inventory 2 times, open space and recreation plan, all of these came up and were updated since 2006. Again, as issues arose, new planning issues came to light, or there was an issue that arose in an area of the town, and there was a need to update the master plan, it has been a number of times since 2006.
I think the question was whether or not the council sees each amendment. Like, do we see it? Was the question right? Was that not? All right, never mind, I'm out. Oh, was it the question? Okay.
So the question is, does the Township Council get it? So the master plan being the responsibility of the planning board, there is no Township Council involvement in the master plan amendments or the master plan reexamination. However, as a result of master plan amendments and master plan reexaminations, oftentimes, and I can tell you every time that there has been an amendment and every time there's been a reexamination, it has resulted in the planning department referring to the Township Council through the appropriate board, be appropriate committee, either the land use committee or any other relevant economic development committee of council, zoning amendments, zoning ordinance amendments that then are considered by council. So that's how council's involvement takes place with a master plan amendment. The master plan amendment takes place making a recommendation that certain changes take place in the master plan. As a result of those changes in the master plan, there's the corresponding zoning ordinance amendment that amends our zoning ordinances to coincide and be consistent with the master plan.
And the last thing, and again, I think I did address this a little bit in my presentation, there's also council representation and liaisons on these various advisory committees. And I think part of your meeting sometimes, I think you report to the rest of your council what occurred at these different committees. So there are constant chains of communication from these different advisory committees to the council.
And I think his last, or I don't know if it's his last question, one of his questions was, how long have you been here and which updates have you experienced?
I started in January 2007. So 2006 master plan preceded me, and I've been here for the rest.
County and state. County and state involvement, I think, was the last question in the master plan.
Well, there's no state involvement.
Because he was asking if there's roads that are county and state, so what is the connection? Are they involved in any of the process? I think that's what Mr. Guy was asking about.
Well, I mean, we are in pretty constant communication with the county planning staff. Bob and I are constant communication with Walter Lane, who's the county planning board planning director. And it's a matter of, a lot of times it's a matter of personal communication. I mean, they are heavily involved, and they have a number of different, they do a number of different countywide studies, and I personally have been involved in a lot of those different steering committees for their circulation element and other things over the years. I don't think I was on for that in particular, but I have been on their steering committees for various different topics over the years since my employment.
But it's also just as far as, I think that Mr. Guy brought up the fact that there are county roads and state roads in Franklin Township, and there absolutely are a number of county roads and one state highway and one interstate highway. Those roads and information on those roads are incorporated into our circulation element. That's just part, it has nothing to do with the county planning board, has nothing to do with state planning commission. It's just the fact that they're part of the circulation element of Franklin Township. So if you were to read that circulation plan, which is, I guess, about 75 or 80 pages long, and you so choose to read it, I read it, and just because I have this twisted interest in traffic, God forbid, I don't know why, that circulation element includes, obviously, all of the data that's gleaned from the state for state highways and county for county highways, so that the classification of roadways and any recommendations for improvements that are as a part of that circulation element come from that bodies.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Debbie Stewart, 2 Farrington Plaza. I'm going to do it the way that guy did because he got a lot of airtime. And so, hang on. Okay, the thing that confuses me, variances. So you make restrictions for certain areas, and then there's always requests for variances. And I don't understand why very often they're granted. So the D variances, why would you ever allow something that shouldn't be there to be there? Why would you allow things that you obviously have put a lot of time into prohibiting to be put into place? And I know you mentioned the word hardship, if it creates a hardship. What does that mean? That a developer can't do what he wants to do, therefore it becomes a hardship for him, so therefore you should grant him a variance? So you'll have to clarify that a little more for me, excuse me. That's one question about variances. And
The scenic corridor, we've heard about that. Is that part of the master plan? Let's see, what else did I have? When an area is rezoned, who and when are the people that are advised? You may have touched on that. Does everybody get a letter? Only people within a certain distance of the zoning change? And let's Yes, you said, maybe I said this already. I think I did. If it's detrimental to the master plan. I don't really know what detrimental to the master plan means. I mean, it might be detrimental also to the people, that are living around the areas where you are making an allowance. So we're concerned about the master plan. We should also be concerned about the humans around the area. Maybe you can help me with that.
Yeah, well, thank you for those questions. So first, I'll just go backwards. So first, your question was, what does it mean to be, that they have to answer the question of being detrimental, substantially detrimental to the master plan? It can get technical here. So part of, actually, to your questions, you also mentioned hardship. So in order to prove a variance to the planning board or zoning board, there's basically two main things that they need to address. One is called, it's again, from the municipal land use law, it's called the positive criteria. And then you also have to address the negative criteria. In terms of the positive criteria, they either have to prove a hardship, and I'll explain some examples of what that could be, or they have to prove that the variance represents a better zoning alternative. So first I'll speak to hardship. No, it can't just be a hardship that I won't make as much money. That's not the law. They have to prove that there is some unique aspect to that property that renders compliance an undue burden. So, let's say there is a big cliff or a big boulder, and they can't place the house, compliant, so they're going to move the house over a little bit because they can't blow up the boulder. They don't want to, if that's going to destroy the environment. If we move the house over a little bit, that would avoid that hardship. A better zoning alternative, I like to use an example of maybe have a historic area and the zoning requires that all of the homes be set back from the front property line 40 feet. But it's in an older area of the town, so the developer says, or the builder says, well, I want to actually line it up with the rest of the homes so it fits in better. Your ordinance, your law is saying I need to be 40 feet back. That's going to look really weird on that street. It's actually going to be better if I place them 20 feet like the rest of the homes, try to design it so it fits in with the rest of the homes. That's what they call a C2 variance. That's a better zoning alternative than what our ordinance requires. And the applicant needs to prove that through testimony and exhibits and plans. On the negative side, they do have to address, since this was a presentation on the master plan, part of the negative criteria is they need to prove that it's not substantially detriment to the master plan. They also have to prove that it's not substantially detriment to the public good. And that, depending on the variance, that could mean a number of different things. It could be environmental, could be community, it could be community character, depends on the application and what the issue is and what variance they're seeking. And then they need to prove finally that the benefits on the positive side, that they're avoiding some hardship or this is a better zoning alternative, that the benefits of that outweigh whatever detriments may occur. So that is, in a nutshell, that is what they need to prove when they are seeking a variance. I think that does speak to your first question of why grant a variance. That's a very good question. There are a lot of times when a variance is, again, I think my first, or my example of the historic area, I think that is an example where a variance makes a lot of sense. There are other times when the applicant just wants what they want. And maybe there's not as much justification. Depends on the situation. That we have had situations where, again, there might be some residential subdivision. Our ordinance says that the road has to be laid out in a certain way, and the lots have to be laid out in a certain way. But the developer says, you know what, we're not asking for any more lots than we're allowed, but if we rearrange the lots maybe in a little different way, maybe this lot's a little bit bigger, this lot's a little bit bigger, but that lot over there, maybe that's a little bit smaller than required, but we're avoiding that stand of trees, or we're going to have a bigger buffer to that stream. You know, we could put the house over here, and all those trees are going to go away, but if we make it a little bit bigger here, that'll be in the backyard of that home, so we don't have to disturb it. And again, over here, these lots are going to be a little bit smaller. They're not getting any more homes than they're allowed, but they're technically asking to vary our ordinance. So that's an example of when a variance might be, deemed appropriate by the board. Scenic corridor, yes, it is in our master plan. There's a map in the historic element of the master plan that shows the historic and scenic resources, and then our ordinance references that map. So if you're identified, if there's a property on those roads, on that map in the master plan, then our scenic corridor ordinance applies to that property, or within a certain distance of that. Who gets noticed when there's a zone change? We notice everybody within the affected zone and everybody within 200 feet of that zone. I think those are your questions.
Hi, Robin Sedam, 54 Skillman's Lane. Thank you very much, Mr. Healy and Council, for making this available to us. You did a very nice job of explaining how modifications are made to the plan over the course of time. Could you walk us through what will happen for this comprehensive re-examination we're due for in '26? How do you go about that? When you're talking about the individual amendments, they were in reaction to something happening. How do you do the 10-year one? If you just walk us through that, it'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, that's a good question. There are, when you do a re-examination of the master plan, there are guidelines that the state tells you that you need to do. You need to identify the recommendations that are in your current document. You need to identify what are those issues that are there new issues, new facts, new factors that are affecting those previous recommendations. Have you implemented them or not? You need to go through and kind of, so when we did the one in 2016, basically went through all of the different elements, all of those different elements, and identified basically what did each one of those documents recommend, and did we implement them or not? And then again, are there other things that we need to think about? So then it kind of builds on top of the previous documents. And then sometimes from that, there may be recommendations to, hey, we need to update our, for example, our trails plan is a little old. So when maybe the trails plan is from 2009, maybe we want to re-examine that. There might be, some of them may have already been built, maybe there's new areas, new open space that has been acquired that's not even in there yet, so that should be looked at. But that's an example of a recommendation that could flow from when you do it before 2026.
And do you go out to each of the commissions and the committees to ask for their input? Or do you go to the community to ask for their input?
Or it would be both. I mean, it definitely will be.
Part of the process.
Yeah, there definitely would be public input. It's tough to say, because we're not doing it yet, so I don't know exactly what the process would be, but I think we've demonstrated that the township does have all of these advisory committees, and we township council and the township as a whole relies upon those. Every single one of these, we didn't just prepare the plans, give it to them, and go, hey, let us know what you think. I mean, historic preservation element was basically prepared by the Historic Preservation Committee. When you're with myself, working with them, and then once that draft was prepared, then it was presented to the planning board. And a lot of the other elements, open space was done in the same way.
So it might be fair, being on the Environmental Commission, it might be fair to say in 2024, you start saying to the various commissions and committees, start thinking about what you want and would like to recommend to the master plan, so we have a little time to work on it.
Yeah, it will not be done in a month. It'll be a long process. And the Environmental Commission is a good example too, because when that was the one that was updated twice, the Environmental Commission basically came to the township and said, hey, the environmental resource inventory is a little bit old. We want to update it, and we did.
Thank you very much.
If you want to see a case study in how it's done, the Trails Committee has been working on their master plan for a little over a year. And every meeting they go through their contribution to it and they make adjustments to it. Why they decided to do it at this point in time, I'm not sure, but it had been a while since they updated it and they're updating it. So they spend about 45 minutes every meeting doing that.
And sometimes what happens is, rather than it being like the Environmental Commission or the Ag Advisory Committee, right, for the farmland plan, sometimes and this was, Mark and I had a conversation probably 3 years ago, that what Mark and the planning board had recognized was the circulation traffic, right? We call it a circulation element. That's a nice name for it, but it's traffic, right? I mean, that's what it is. That it had become something that we wanted outside eyes to look at. In the past, we had relied on in-house staff, the engineering department, the police department, to provide the information to make the recommendations in the circulation element. However, this time, we looked and went to an outside firm. We went out, put an RFP out, awarded a contract, and the 21 circulation element was done with fresh eyes, not eyes that are stale. But yeah, so that sometimes is a way that an element of the master plan is as well in a re-exam.
Sudhir 74 Bryant Court. Thank you for this session. It was a good education for me, at least specifically. I understand that you develop a master plan and you go through all the process, follow various rules, regulations, state and board and whatnot. But master plan, I suspect, is based on community vision. Community vision is there, and based on that vision, you develop the master plan, and then you do rest of the things. My question is here. A few years ago, Franklin Township was the best town in U.S. at one point. What was your vision at that time? What's your vision now? How often the vision has changed? Because Franklin Township is no longer the best town in U.S., okay?
I'll address part of that, and then our planner might have more insight. These planning documents and the master plan, as comprehensive and important as it is to the town, it's not a vision plan. It's not like towns will do, and ironically, a former mayor from decades ago recently sent me a copy of one they did many, many decades ago. It basically was a vision plan for the township. So, of course, it involved things that would be relevant to the master plan we're discussing tonight, but it was more comprehensive. It was really about every component of the township, life in the township, and any part that government plays in it. So we're not here to talk about that, but I just want to put that out there. I don't know if that's what the gentleman is talking about, because occasionally councils will do that. Like I say, decades ago, they did it here. We've done like mini versions as a township council, sometimes related to like platform initiatives. But my recollection, the last 10 or 15 years, we've never actually done a complete vision plan for the town. That could work as some sort of guidance or reference for these planning documents and master plans, which are statutory requirements as explained by our planner earlier.
I understand that. Let me just clarify. It may not be related to master plan. What I'm saying is that every country, every prime minister, presidents, every township should have a vision. It seems like Franklin Township don't have a vision. That's what I'm looking for. What's your vision? Where do you want to take the Franklin Township 10 years down the road, okay? You're going to do it through master plan and other amendments, okay? Right? Without vision, you cannot go. You cannot move forward. People need to have a vision. I need to have a vision. I want to become a lawyer. And to fulfill that vision, I need to do certain things, right? So where is the vision of Franklin Township here? What's the vision?
Well, again, we don't have that type of document you're talking about. There's a lot of smaller, we can call them what they want, but whether it's a commission or board or whatever aspect of town government, there are lots of plans. I think you're talking about a comprehensive document that just dissects the entire town.
Vision is defined in one paragraph. You don't need a 50-page document for your vision, sir.
I think he's asking us, big picture, what do we want for the town, and what are we doing to actualize it? I think that's what he's,
I'm saying, we don't have a specific,
but I think he's saying that maybe we should discuss.
oh yeah, and that's why I mentioned it. I think it would be good to pursue, but this, yeah, it's a good idea, although,
I think that, just, I'd add this, the master plan, and I, Mark and I were just talking, a vision plan would be a very good thing. Elected officials, master plan, we'll go back to what was stated earlier, is a function of the planning board. The master plan deals with land uses and all of those factors that affect land uses, and as a result of your master plan, certain documents are generated, primarily zoning ordinances. But, as one who has studied the master plans of the town, going back many years, it's interesting. Master plans are made almost to be changed. That's why you have a reexamination. It used to be every 6 years, I believe, Dr. Chase, and now it's every 10, right? So one of the most interesting master plans I ever read was done by a consultant planner who often does work for applicants in front of our planning board, John Chadwick. The 1972 master plan was a very interesting master plan. The 1972 master plan referenced things like Route 92 and the Somerset Expressway. These were roadways that if they were built, most of you wouldn't be in this room right now because your homes wouldn't be there because there were going to be interstate highways through the neighborhoods where you live. But because master plans evolve and change based on needs and based on other factors, that's why a master plan isn't a written in stone, you must do it this way, black and white document. It's not, that's not what it is. The Somerset Expressway would have cut right up through what is now Somerset Run in the middle of Franklin Township. That road never got built because of a variety of factors, but that's what you have to remember when you talk about a master plan. It's not something concrete, and that's not the vision plan of a township. That's a plan that looks at all different factors and tries to make it comply with the municipal land use law and make a plan that allows for a variety of development throughout the town to include preserved spaces where those are necessary, recreational spaces and things of the sort. So that's really kind of.
Did you want to say something?
I did want to say something to the aspect of vision. Can you talk a little bit about the Hamilton Business District and what the vision is there, which is in our plan and is buttressed by our zoning?
Yeah, well, I'll wrap that into my little bit larger thought, which is we do have goals and objectives that are in our master plan. And we do, I don't think we have a one-paragraph vision statement, but the township's vision for its future, I think, are basically incorporated into all of the different elements of the master plan. The fact that the township has been adopting these various plans, has been working with its different advisory committees, in my opinion, tells you that there are certain things are very important to the township and the township council. The fact that there's a historic preservation plan that was prepared so that that its historic commission could have certified local government status, which gives, that is a statement by the township council that historic preservation is very important. The farmland preservation plan, the fact that the township went through the effort to adopt a farmland plan that followed the very stringent requirements of the state ag board so that the township would be qualified for certain funding for ag preservation. Same thing with the open space plan, very specific requirements of what that plan has to have. All of these are optional elements. The township council, the township, the planning board did not need to do any of these. You chose to do all of these different elements because historic preservation, farmland preservation, environmental protection, all of those things are important, and they've resulted in real results. Again, using farmland preservation and open space, 34% of the township is preserved, and that's by no small effort on the part of the town and the township council to implement those recommendations over the last few decades. So, yes, there may not be one concise statement, and I'm not minimizing the importance. It is a good practice sometimes to consolidate where do you want to go into the future, what do we want to be, and to consolidate that into a paragraph or two is a good thing to have and something to always go to. But I guess what I'm getting to is the fact that there might not be that one paragraph doesn't mean that all of these different things, that you're not taking all those different community character related issues to heart and implementing them. And related to that, the Hamilton Street, again, that's one of those issues that arose about 10 years ago. There was concern that Hamilton Street was stagnating, that there wasn't too much activity that was occurring. Working with the Hamilton Street Advisory Board, again, the same thing. Advisory committee that's focused on Hamilton Street. We worked with the Hamilton Street Advisory Board. We had a consultant as well do a study of that. We made changes to the master plan, changes to the ordinance. The planning board and council were involved and worked together to implement those. We essentially made some relatively small tweaks to the ordinance that resulted in some of the mixed-use development that is occurring on Hamilton Street. And Mr. Dominic, who's the executive director of that, could speak in detail about a lot of the other related things that are occurring and activities on Hamilton Street. But again, that's just another example of the different things that have come out of the master plan are being implemented.
Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt.
Good evening. Arnold Schmidt, 134 Hickory Road, Somerset. First, thank you for this evening. I do have a few questions. My understanding that Franklin consists of about 46 square miles of land, which means we have about 29,548 acres of land. My first question is, based on our township master plan, can you tell us approximately how many acres or what percentage of Franklin's 46 square miles of land is zoned for each land use designation? For example, how much each for industrial, commercial, retail, residential, mixed use, or agricultural, etc.? I believe preserve open space, I thought it was 35%. I stand corrected if you said 34%.
Close enough.
Do you have these figures, or at least ballpark figures, that you could give us tonight? And my second part of that question, and hopefully you can give us those figures, if not tonight, you can get back to us. based on this information about the amount of acres zoned for each type of designation, can you tell us about what percentage or how many acres for each category that we have has not yet been developed or built on? I believe it's important that we know this information so we have an idea of what the possibilities for future development in Franklin are based on the current master plan.
No, I do not have those figures. I mean, they are, the first question is very readily, we could find out very easily. I mean, it's all mapped out. So we could very easily find out how much is zoned in, we use the term, you think you heard R20, R10, half-acre zoning, 1 acre zoning, 3 acre zoning, 6 acre zoning, how much is industrial, how much is retail. We can get those figures quite easily. I don't have them in my head. Trying to figure out, or getting how much land is undeveloped, and I'm assuming the intent is, what is the theoretical build-out? I mean, that's a far more complicated question, because whether a property is undeveloped or not does not in and of itself say it's going to be developed. There's certainly lands that that are underdeveloped. Maybe they are a 5-acre property and they have 1 house. Well, it's developed, but it could be an application tomorrow. You can have a property that's 100 acres and it's completely covered by wetlands, floodplain, et cetera, and most likely will never be developed. Or you can have a piece of property that, we've had a few of these, where it has 4-story office buildings. Today, it's fully developed, and tomorrow we have an application for a warehouse on it. So it's really difficult to just say, it's not actually really accurate to say, okay, what's the undeveloped land, and that's what our development's going to be. We could get that information for you, but I'm not sure it's going to tell you much.
Well, you answered the first question and said that you can get that information to us, so I would appreciate it if, when you can get me that information.
Sure.
The second part of the question, I did say what the possibilities for future development are.
I think it's very, very speculative, Arnie.
Understood.
Yeah, I mean, no. So there, like Mr. Healy said, wetlands. Let's just talk about wetlands for a second. Without a letter of interpretation from the DEP, we have no way to determine where wetlands specifically are, so therefore it's impossible to determine whether that vacant land can or cannot be developed. So to make those assumptions, I don't think is really the appropriate thing to do. Until a property is looked at to be developed, like Mr. Healy said, you have a parcel that has 1 house. I mean, and this, we have this all over town. We have one house that sits on 10 acres that's in an R40 zone. One, that means that more than 1 house could be on it, clearly, but 2, maybe not. So to make those assumptions, I don't think is what you do when you look at things from a planning perspective.
And I think what it speaks to is the smaller the area, the more accurate you can get. You can make maybe a little more direct assumptions. Maybe how some of the other properties in the area have been developed, what intensity they've been developed. When you try to extrapolate that out to the township as a whole, the information gets less and less accurate to the degree that it's kind of useless information. We have done area-specific kind of build-out scenarios. I did one a few years ago for the sewage authority for a small area in the South Boundbrook. I want to know, okay, what theoretically is the number of homes that can be built in that particular area. But even that, and that was for maybe a square mile, even that was very speculative, because it's very hard to tell sometimes.
I mean, we do it for every piece of property that we look to acquire as open space, or every piece of property we look to preserve as farmland. You have to look at a property and do a build-out analysis on that property to determine its value, and that takes into account all of those different factors that I just said: wetlands, setbacks, road frontage. The zone that the particular property is in means that it has to have so much frontage per lot. Then you have to build roads to develop residential lots. So when you have to build roads, that means you have to have right-of-way. That doesn't even get included in the build-out analysis. All of those things to do for what you don't know will happen until someone comes forward with a plan to develop it.
Well, again, the first part of the question you answered, you can't get it to me. The second part of the question, I'm looking for a real ballpark figure, if at all, is any.
So I just want to, I agree with what the manager and the planner are saying, and I don't want to put words in Arnie's mouth, but I think what you might be alluding to, and I think we should pursue it, not in detail now, but is a sense of, maybe not R40 or, we're 1 acre, not that people shouldn't be concerned, but I think you're looking for, okay, you have all this manufacturing lots. What is not built out? You have high-density housing allowed over here. What has not been built? So you can get a general idea of what, especially higher volume projects, could possibly happen based on current zoning. Is that what well, I know you're beyond your time, but I think there's a way to get a sense. We do it when we look at certain areas when we're reconsidering zoning, and the council doesn't obviously direct personnel specifically, but I think it might be worth looking into getting some information to go along with what you're saying to help with all of the documents and planning and master plan review we'll be doing.
Yeah, as I said before, if the area, the smaller the area, the easier that analysis is. So if it was concentrated on one particular zone, we could come up with some very generic build-out based on a whole slew of assumptions. Again, I used the example before. We may do this analysis. Do we include properties that are currently developed? We have properties that have warehouses. I know this is the issue. It has a warehouse on it. How do we know whether that particular property owner is going to come in tomorrow or never to expand? It has an office building on it. We have no idea if tomorrow they may or may not make an application. So there's going to have to be a whole slew of assumptions, even for a zone-specific build-out analysis.
Or where something may not be conforming, but when one property is purchased by a next-door property, then it becomes conforming.
I think we can move on. Thank you.
Good evening. Hi, everybody. Thank you for doing this. Mark, you're doing a good job. I just want to say personally,
Name and address.
Bill Connell, 25 Spring Street. Over many years, Mark asked many of my questions. He's very knowledgeable. And, tonight is no different than what he does in private. If you ask a good question, he'll take the time and walk it through for you. I only have, it's kind of redundant, but if you alluded to it, but what is the after you do all this, what is the importance of this document legally, okay, to an applicant, okay, the day before you adopt this and the day after you adopt this? What is the consequence, because you talk about participation and planning and getting it ready, and those are all times for people to contribute and maybe impact that document. But there's a point where there's a legal difference at what point with this document. And I just want to know, you understand the question?
Yeah, so, again, as I said before, the master plan at the end of the day is a policy document and not law. But I guess to get to the question of why it's important, the township has there's an implied, I can't think of the right word, but I'll just use the word objective or incentive, I can't think of the right word, for the township council to implement zoning that is consistent with the master plan, and that the township council has. So to the degree that the master plan's important, it sets forth that policy, and then the township council implements that by the zoning ordinance, and that tells the developers whether they can build what they want to build. You know, if you want to know, somebody wants to, we get these questions all the time. Where can I build an apartment building? Well, we point them to the zones through apartment buildings. I want to build, I had a question today, I want to build a shopping center. And I pointed them to the general business zone and the neighborhood business zone in Hamilton Street and the retail district overlay. They wanted to build I won't say the property, but I'll just say they wanted to build on a property that was not zoned for a shopping center. And I told them, this is where you can build shopping centers. It starts with the master plan, gets incorporated into the zoning. So that is important. Then when they actually do make an application to the board, again, if they need a variance, part of that analysis is to prove to that particular board why it doesn't have a negative impact on the master plan.
Good evening, Charles and Wiltera, 86 Saratoga Court. Again, thank you for making this available to us. And Mr. Healy did a good job, the 10,000 high-level plan on, discussion on the master plan. All right, so it was very, very good, very understanding. But later, Mr. Shaw asked the question, hey, any good business, any good team, any whatever has a vision. And then I believe Mr. Fasanella has said, well, we don't have a vision. We do it the Brooklyn way. Hey, we don't have a vision, okay? So the thing is, and then the first statement, the first sentence that Mr. Healy reads out, the master plan requirements, a policy document that sets forth the community's vision. So I'd like to ask the council members present, does Franklin Township have a vision by a show of hands? Yes, if there's a vision, or no, if Franklin Township doesn't have a vision?
You're asking if there's a vision statement or if we have an
Does the township have a vision that is allowing them to guide this community? I know, Mr. Dominic, you work for the community, right, for the council, and you had a vision because you said to us at Canal Walk, my job was to go out and get business revenue, and I did it well. And you did. So the point is, I'm sure they directed you, they gave you a vision and objective. So the township council, as a one unit, one body, not individuals, what is our town's vision? Do we have one? Show of hands, yes?
So I think you just answered your question. I think each of us, I know at least I do, I have my own vision, multiple visions, but I don't think there is not a vision statement.
Okay, so there isn't a vision statement.
This is not a master plan question. We've just discussed that.
But it comes up in the master plan.
I'm not telling you you have to stop.
No, but I'm just saying, it says we're talking about the master plan.
For instance, my vision is keep taxes as low as possible, get as much open space preserved as possible.
Okay. And that's fine. So can I then ask, so therefore you would, in your opinion, raise your hand. What are the other council members? I mean, we know yours, we know Mr. Dominic's.
Well, you heard a small part of mine.
Okay.
I don't know that I can articulate every little piece of it.
Okay,
but you heard part of it.
Okay, so basically, can I deduce then that Franklin Township, your township, my township, their township, there is no unified vision?
I think that you are trying to harp on a word when we live in a community that's 47 square miles.
And I think you're playing with numbers. It's a simple question. What do you guys see for this community?
Do you want me to finish or not?
You're going to finish anyway, so please do.
That's okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
So I'll just answer that and say, that I think we all have vision. I think it's all very similar. Is there a written statement, a 2 or 3 page document that summarizes it? No, and I think we should have one. So that's what tonight is about, trying to find good ideas to bring all of our desires for the town with input from the community.
Township need a cap. Major sports team.
So what is the vision of the United States? What is the vision of the state of New Jersey? What is the vision of Somerset County? None of these, excuse me, man, what I'm saying is none of these have a drawn-out vision that I know of, anyway. So I think Councilmember Potasnik is exactly right. You're harping on a word. We each have a plan in our minds of what we want to do and what we want to go for. And the fact that the town doesn't have one written out, I don't know that that's a huge negative. We are all free to pursue what we want to do and push in the direction we want to.
I don't want to necessarily belabor this because I want folks to have their ability to ask their questions. I think what I'm hearing, and this is just me as an individual council person, is that I think the community feels like there's just not clarity on where, and I'm not going to use that word because I don't want to overuse it, on where things are going, right? And I think, I think maybe it's something that we as a body need to digest and perhaps either individually with our focuses, right? The mayor kind of said what his beliefs are and what his focuses are. I have my own, they're public safety related. Councilman Vassanella has his own. I think perhaps we just have to do a better job of unifying that so people can understand that better. And I guess what I can say is that I hear what you were saying, and I'm resonating with that because, there is a clarity to that and there's a comfort to that. And then, that is the first sentence. But all I can say is that I can hear that and I can hear the frustration, and I think that's something that we need to digest as a body and perhaps do a better job of communicating outward as we move forward and make decisions so the community feels like they understand the decisions we're making and why we're making those. So.
And I'll just add that, when Councilman Vassanella says, we don't have a vision, he's speaking really for himself.
Councilman Potasnik, I have a vision. I'm saying we don't have a vision written down. I don't know who would come up with something.
Okay, come on. Mr. Sedan.
Next.
How long has your family been here?
Couple of weeks. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, thank you for having us. My name is Reich Sudam. I live at 1803 State Route 27 in beautiful Somerset, New Jersey. Franklin High, class of 78.
A young man.
I won't use the vision word. I just did. The forethought. Franklin Township had great forethought. Do you know that New Jersey leads the nation in farmland preservation in percentages per acre? New Jersey leads the nation, and up until 2020, and we may still, Franklin Township led the state in farmland preservation. So did we have vision or forethought? Yes, we did, and we still do. So I applaud Franklin Township for that. But my main question tonight, because a lot of people here are worried about warehouses, as am I, road traffic in Franklin Township is crazy. And I farm on Skillman Lane on both sides, and I'm dealing with trucks coming up and down Skillman Lane, and we're working with the police, and they've been great about it. But more warehousing is not good. But I'm an American. I believe in property rights. Let's see if you're still applauding when I'm done. I believe in property rights. So if it's zoned for industrial, because that would be warehousing would go industrial or through a variance, and we restrict that. Okay, I'm for that, I think. Depends how it's worded. Is there thought, this is an open-ended question, you're not going to answer it tonight, to compensate a property owner if we ban warehousing, any future warehousing in Franklin Township? How are we going to compensate
a property owner by taking away that right? I don't know if there's an
The
answer.
answer is that won't be answered. I'll answer that question for all of the people up here. That question will not be answered.
Tonight?
No, that question will not be answered. Tonight, tomorrow night, or any other night.
The planning board attorney you may have seen just spoke to me and said, we have litigation pending and we're not going to answer.
Okay, great. I'm okay with not getting an answer, but I just wanted to bring it forward that people that own property that were allowed to have warehousing yesterday, and we ban it tonight or whenever it happens, how do we compensate them? We got to put that into the planning, to the vision, to the forethought, because those of us who live in Franklin Township, don't need any more warehousing, don't need more trucks. So please put that as part of your consideration. That's all I've got, unless there's a question from the council.
No, but I'd like to say I appreciate you understanding that it's not a simple question. It's not, you push one way and then things go the other way. It's not as simple as some would think, and I appreciate you recognizing that.
Thank you for your time.
Good evening. Rob Peterson, 66 Wilson Road. So I think what we find ourselves in again tonight is a situation of transparency, accountability. I heard Mr. Healy, who's a pretty well-paid person here in our township, talk about how easy it is to go before the board and the zoning board and hear all about all the plans and have our opportunities to ask questions addressed. I can tell you, I was on some of those Zoom calls during the pandemic, and they were very restrictive about the types of questions that you could ask. So unless you're going to be a groupie, who I don't know if we have time to do that, unless you're going to be a groupie and follow every single committee and board in this town, we're going to find ourselves in situations like this over and over. We've gone around and around on some issues in the past. The warehouse one seems to be a pretty big issue here tonight. You got, by my count, probably about 50 people here in the room. You've had probably 20 or 24 people come up and talk. My specific question is, again, along the lines of, transparency, maybe accountability. I'd like to talk about the temples or houses of worship, whatever phrase we're supposed to use, down on South Middlebush. Were variances issued? If so, how many? At what level? I've reviewed some of the master plans going back a couple of decades, and they're pretty detailed about the types of, land use. It's agricultural in that area. There's talking about preservation of water and runoff and groundwater and surface water and all wildlife and trees. To my mind, it's pretty comprehensive. And the next thing you know, we turn around during a pandemic and we find out we have 2 major temples going on in that area. Adjacent to farms, adjacent to farmland.
Mr. Pearson, just hold on 1 second. So, Mr. Clark, and I think that we need to address the issue of specific applications. And this is now going down the line of a specific application that is yet to be heard by the board. Well, it's probably not an appropriate topic to have a discussion in the master plan town hall meeting.
Give him the microphone.
So that's why I'm asking you, Mr. Clark, and as the planning board attorney, to address this matter, because this is an application that has yet to be heard by the Board of Adjustment. And so I will just address something right now. And Mr. Peterson, you started to address this, so I'm going to address something. We're not going to talk about time allotment here. All right. Those boards are quasi-judicial boards, both the planning board and the zoning board of adjustment. And as such, there are protocols, just as there are protocols in court related to the public's involvement in each of those boards' hearings. And while you talk about the Zoom meetings and while you were limited to questioning, that's the appropriate thing to be limited on in a quasi-judicial hearing. And that's why you were limited. What Mr. Healy spoke to earlier and the public meetings that take place are when we spoke about the master plan reexamination, when the public input is sought out at work sessions of the planning board. That happens, and that happens at every reexamination of the planning board, as well as every amendment to the master plan. That's not the same as a public hearing on an application in front of the board for development, whether it be the Board of Adjustment or the planning board. So let's not mix two things up here. Master plan amendments and master plan reexamination versus an application in front of one of the land use boards. Two very, very different things. And the transparency is complete as far as the master plan process is concerned. And the public's input is sought out and given each time we've done a reexamination and an amendment.
That might be a matter of opinion, but, so is it, last question then, is it too much to ask then for an accounting of, let's talk about the warehouses. You want to limit it to the warehouses, something that's already been going on? Can we talk about?
No, we're here to talk about the master plan process, not development, but
you do understand how I began my questioning. We're talking about an accountability and a loss of public trust issue here, I think, amongst the township and our representatives. So I would propose that you just a proposal, my last statement, take it under advisement. I think in order to help restore some of the public trust, I know Mayor Kramer, you're big on that, I appreciate that. What were the variances? How many? What was the level? And, can we have some, who, what, why, where, and when of it all? Can we have, that's all I would ask for.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking specifically about
what?
All the variances that go on, the master plan that's not followed, the variances that go on.
Your question is unanswerable unless you give specific
That's a great bureaucratic
That's not a bureaucratic answer.
It is a bureaucratic
You've asked for the number of variances. During what period of time, for what type of applications, are they residential?
That's what we're going to
So
get
you
from this
didn't,
town council.
you don't ask a specific question, you can't get a specific answer.
Hi. Marlon Kwan, 28 Jay's Corner. First off, I appreciate tonight's meeting. We've asked for it for a while now. And so I'm hoping that this is not the last one, especially if we're doing a rezoning review and we all can have some input into that. But my first question actually is to the legal counsel here with regards to a situation that can occur, whether it's an error, whether it's by influence, or whether it's by a situation that just is happenstance. But if the zoning allows for something to happen, and this is the first time it's happening, and it comes to light that there's a specific problem that council and everybody else agrees is not good for the town, but is allowed because zoning created the allowable use under the municipal land use law, what can the township do about that?
I'm not sure exactly what the question is, sir, but I'll tell you this. The way you have phrased it, okay, leads me to the conclusion that is directed to a specific warehouse at a specific location.
No, it's not.
Well, it seems to me that it is. And for that reason, I would like to decline to answer it because we're going to have an application heard very soon, in January.
I'm not going to argue with counsel. I'm not going to put the town in legal jeopardy.
All right, another person asked about the scenic corridor, that it's part of the master plan. Why is it that any variance to a scenic corridor would be under the auspices of the planning board and not the zoning board?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are 6 specific types of D variances. One, again, is what we call a use variance. Again, that's when a use not in the zone that's permitted. That's a D1. A D2 variance is when there's a pre-existing non-conforming use. So let's say there was a store in a residential zone, it's been there forever, zoning came into play afterwards, and then they want to expand that retail shop in that residential zone, zoning board. If it is a conditional use, so, for example, schools are a conditional use in residential zones, subject to very specific conditional use standards. Has to be on certain types of roads, has to have certain setbacks, etc. If an applicant wants to vary from any one of those conditional use standards, they have to go to the zoning board. There's another category of, there's three more. One is density. So, for example, if the zone, let's say it's a zone that permits apartments at 6 units to the acre, and somebody wants to build 12 units to the acre, greater density than the zone permits, zoning board. Floor area ratio. What that means is that's the percentage of the property, it's the ratio of the square footage of the building to the square footage of the lot. It's a measurement of the intensity of development. And if they want to go above that, that's the zoning board. And then the last one is a height variance, when the height is either they want to build a building that is more than 10% or 10 feet higher than the zone permits. Zoning board. So those are very specific, 6 very specific categories of variances. If it falls under those specific categories, zoning board. Everything else is what's called a C variance. Scenic corridor. Now, it may be very important to the community, but if it doesn't fall within those particular categories, the jurisdiction rests with the planning board, not the zoning board.
Okay, last question as a segue.
I'm sorry, your time's up.
But he was answering my question.
If you're going to ask your question and want an answer that it's well-known, we do it in the council meetings, that comes out of your time.
You know where to find me.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just give me a call. Thanks a lot.
Yep.
Barbara Burns. I live at 79 Haverhill Place. And thank you for having this meeting. I've enjoyed, you're sitting and looking at us, and I'm sitting looking at Ben, Abe, George, Obama, John, and Martin. What a wonderful company to be in here. And that's the work that we're doing. That's the vision. That's the vision. To be helpful to people. And I was just wondering, how many people are on the planning board? You've been speaking predominantly, and are there any women or young people on the planning board?
On the planning, there are women on the planning board. I don't know what qualifies as young, but there isn't anybody in their 20s that I can think of.
Well, that may have influenced the vision for the community. You know, young people and vibrancy and forward thinking. You know, people with children. How many people are on the planning board, roughly?
I'm sorry. There's nine members of the board and 2 alternates.
Yes, 7 voting members, 7 regular members and the 2 alternates, and if one of the regular members isn't there, then the alternate can vote.
And one of the council members is a member of the Environmental Commission is a member.
Okay, she didn't ask that.
Well, she asked what complies the board.
She asked how many
Because we rely on you, even though I've lived here for 20 years, I don't really attend these until the warehouses. How many scientists and environmental scientists are
There's one
hired or?
There's one sitting in the front row.
Oh, good, because that's important, I think, to any development near the canal or any waterways, and I hope that would be taken into any decisions that are made. And in my opinion, this plan, the master plan,
it needs organization in the way it's going to be redone. If you could just list all of the topics and all of the commissions, put them in a list, how many there are, and because they're only going to get done every 10 years, because this one wasn't done since 2006 or 2007. It seems like it's kind of haphazard. If it was just put in a list, all of the commissions, in a very scientific, very organized way, so that ordinary people could understand it. And that's about it. I just hoping for the best, that's all. I was just hopefully, I know you've done a lot of speaking, and I appreciate all the work you do, but I was just wondering if there are more people than yourself that could reflect all of the population of Franklin Township.
So the answer is, he's a staff member. He's not a member of the planning board. He is the township's planner. The planning board is comprised of residents of Franklin Township, both an elected official and people who are appointed to the planning board and the Board of Adjustment who are residents of the town. They're people who live here. That comprises the two boards. So it's not, Mr. Healy is our planner. He's the staff member.
So what is the relationship between him and the
he answers their questions, prepares the documents that are necessary, reviews the plans that are submitted in front of the planning board, does planning reports for the planning board review, as well as the Board of Adjustment.
Does he take their ideas and recommendations?
It's Mr. Healy it's the other way around. It's the other way around. It's the other way around. The planning board is the one who does what you just asked, not Mr. Healy.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just as a point of reference, you brought up the canal. All parcels of land subject to development within 1,000 feet of the canal and then within a certain number of feet of any tributaries are required to be reviewed by the Delaware and Raritan Canal Commission, which is a whole separate commission specifically for that purpose.
Christina Zambri, 3 Buffett Drive. First of all, I would like to make a comment that you were very quick to get Mr. Guy away from the microphone after his time was up, but someone who you were referring to by their first name and joking around with him was able to go well over their time.
No,
So, anyway, I didn't ask for a comment.
I don't,
When we talked about stakeholders,
excuse me,
this is my time now.
We'll stop the clock. I've done this with everybody. When their time is up, I let them know that their time is up. Some people have gone over, some people I didn't call by their first name. So I think you're inaccurate.
I can point to the person and how long, and people kept going like this because they were in line behind him. And the bell went off, and he went, and you guys kept talking.
Hey, we differ in opinion.
So that's fine. It'll be on the record. That's fine. Anyway, we were talking previously about stakeholders, and you're talking about different stakeholders, whether they be landowners or business owners. In my opinion, first and foremost, your residents are your stakeholders. We're the ones that pay taxes here. We're the ones that deal with the repercussions of the decisions that are made, of the master plan, etc. You talk about people being notified during the planning process for the master plan. How exactly are all the residents notified?
Really?
So if you were interested in signing up for notifications from the Township of Franklin, you could go to our website and you could get emails or nixels which announce all public meetings.
How is this all explained to our residents? Like, there are older residents who aren't as technologically savvy. And you're basically asking them to seek out the information as opposed to you being transparent and pushing that information out.
And how would you suggest we do that? I'm asking for your
At this point, we can go old school and just mail the residents.
So we're going to mail 28,000 residents, 28,000 properties, and really about 35,000 residents.
We are your stakeholders.
For every meeting?
You are elected by us.
So your tax bill is going to go up pretty significantly, Mr.
Oh, because of some mailings, I can find a lot of other ways to cut taxes in this
it's going to go up significantly.
I've lived here my entire life.
I'll tell you how much it costs.
And going back to the question of vision, Why are you even on the council if you do not have a vision for this township?
Okay, we're not talking about the master plan now. That's
Master
not
plan, in
talking-
my opinion, master plan should be the vision for the township long-term.
Okay.
Where do you
If we
want
could
us to
keep it
go?
the master
Where
plan,
do you
that would
see
be
us
great.
going? So, again, Mr. Healy said that somebody asked him about the process going through, or the comprehensive readjustment of the master plan. You said that you came on in 2007 and you missed the 2006 one. Well, where were you during the 2016 one?
I was involved in its preparation.
And why couldn't you answer the question?
What was the question? What question
It was
did I not
about
answer?
the process, going through the process of, but when asked directly, he said, I came on board in 2007, after the
Question
2006.
specifically was, when did you become the planner and what master plan reexaminations were you involved in? And he said, I came on in 2007, just after the 2006 reexamination.
And he said nothing
Indicating
about the
that
2016.
He's got-
Because the question centered around the
I
process.
think you need to listen to the tape.
I will listen to the tape. No problem.
I can tell you exactly who asked me about the master plan process, how it goes, what is the process for a master plan, and I answered her in detail. I'm not sure what I didn't answer.
You basically said you totally left out 2016. She asked how you were involved, and you said 2006. And yes, I know that, but he was asked about the process. Now, what do we do in the master plan when there are plans that are at cross purposes? Like, we know the town floods, we've known that for ages. How does that match up against something like warehouse approval? Why weren't changes made sooner? Environmental concerns, green initiatives, but we keep knocking trees down, which causes further flooding. So I believe they're at cross purposes.
We have a floodplain management plan that we have to prepare, and every single plan gets reviewed for consistency with wetlands, floodplain management, gets reviewed by the township, by the board, and also gets reviewed by the Delaware Canal
That's why the
Commission
flooding gets
and the
worse.
NJDEP. If I can finish my answer.
Thank you for your indulgence.
Linda Russell. I live in Somerset Run at 502 Crossfields. Thank you for having this meeting. I've lived in Somerset now 16 years, and sorry to say, but this is my first meeting. The reason I came is because I'm very concerned about this warehouse issue, as I think probably many of the people that are here tonight feel the same. I couldn't understand why I should speak for myself, why I didn't know anything about the Amazon huge complex around the corner from me until it was mostly finished. Now, maybe I missed something, but were there notifications or anything about that, or was it in your paper that you send out? And I have a suggestion as far as the paper that you send out. Is that quarterly or what? I don't remember. I usually read it. And my suggestion might be, if it hasn't been done already, perhaps you would like to put the information that the lady mentioned about where you could find all this information, website or whatever. But it really, getting back to the warehouses, almost every day I'm out, I see another warehouse somewhere on Veronica or around the corner from Somerset Run and by Canal Walk, and it's just very upsetting because of traffic, the fumes and everything from all the semis, all the people coming and going. I mean, 287 now is a disaster almost. So I'd just like to know if you did send out notifications about the meetings regarding this, and maybe I missed it?
You would not have been notified, no, ma'am, because the way that the law requires notifications to be done on specific applications, you, where you live, would not have received a notification because you don't live close enough to that application site to have received notice. Notices are sent by law to all property owners within 200 feet of a subject property that's going in front of one of the boards. So you live much more than 200 feet there, so you would not have been notified.
Mr. Healy, how many applications are there a year, roughly?
It varies.
Just give me,
For each board, I'd say it varies between 20 to 40, generally.
the 20 to 40 a year times 2 to 28,000 people. We can't mail to that every time.
It's actually more, there's 28,000 properties, Mr. Mayor, but then when you have apartments, now you start to, apartment complexes, it's more like 35,000 mailings per application, and you know how much postage is, so we pay postage like everybody else just because we're the government.
What
We
is
don't
the
get it for free.
population of Somerset County?
Somerset, you mean, it's not Somerset?
I meant Somerset.
Franklin Township is about 69,000 people.
So if I wanted to be knowledgeable about future large, huge warehouses going in, how could I find out about that?
So you would go to this website right here, ours, okay? And you would go to the Planning and Zoning tab under Departments, which I'm showing right on the screen right now. And you would go to Planning Board and Zoning Board, and all of their agendas and the application materials and everything related to each application is on those two. Here's Planning Board over here, Planning Board, and here's Zoning Board. And all of that information is there. Also, if you're interested in getting notices on meetings, go to the Township website and sign up for email notifications, and we'll send you an email every time there's going to be a meeting. Some of them you might get tired of seeing over and over again, but we'll send you a notice for all of our meetings if you want to get one.
And if I were to go on there, would it say, for instance, we're using Amazon as an example, would it say Amazon application or whatever?
Well, I'll show you.
But once you go to, this is the last question.
I'm doing it now. I'm doing it.
Go, time is up, so this is
You
your
go to the zoning board hearing on
I was
Thursday?
just going to, okay, I went to Planning Board, of course, but if you go here, it says application material. So here it is, current or pending applications before the board. And all of the applications before the board are there, and you can click on any one of them. Here's McDonald's. That one just completed their application for the board. You see it says McDonald's USA, 940 Eastern Avenue, JFK, preliminary and final major site plan with C variance. It'll give you the application forms, the survey, the site plans, the architecturals, the traffic impact report, the environmental impact report, for every application that there is.
Okay, now
And you
I know
can just kind of go look and read at your leisure.
Your time is up.
Excuse me,
Your time's up.
The gentleman that was waiting told me to go ahead, that he was being very polite and said, you go ahead. So he really should have come before me, but...
I'm not saying the meeting's over, I'm saying your time is up.
Thank you.
And just one follow-up related to that, because I think we keep talking about who gets the notifications, but when in the process do notifications go?
Before an application takes place, at least 10 days before the application hearing, a notice is required to be served on all residents all property owners within 200 feet of a subject property that is going to make that application before the board, and certified mail. And there's also a legal notice in the newspaper as well.
As a follow-up to the woman who just spoke, ma'am, it's not your time, but I'm addressing something you said. What she was asking for, and you just explained very nicely, I'm wondering if we can get, if not the whole edition, at least a good amount of our upcoming newsletter that maybe puts in simple language a lot of, as far as where to go, where you like just described, this way
Well,
every house...
unfortunately, it won't go out, and we missed it by about a week. This quarterly's out, yeah.
But I'm saying maybe...
To the printer.
Maybe for the spring, I can't speak
that's
for all
fine,
council,
sure.
but everybody here gets it in the mail, that printed version, you keep it around and give a really, just a direct tutorial of, here's where you go to find this, here's with the drop-down windows, what they just explained wonderfully, but this way you have a printed copy, everyone in Township has it, and then people probably get more engaged, or at least they'll have the roadmap to get engaged, because we realize that it's not easy to access all this, especially if you're not regularly online. So anyway, so maybe that will help, and thank you. I thought about it earlier, but when you mentioned it, I said, let me say it before I forget. So anyway, Mayor, I'm sorry, the mayor, your time, you have to go through him. But thank you for the input, and maybe that will help going forward.
Alex Strauss, 285 Hazlitt Way, Somerset. Maybe a couple things might be worked on that seem to be almost in crisis. Of course, people mention traffic. The other one is larger retail. Things like, for instance, traffic. It's very dangerous. Some of these areas that don't have traffic lights, I know we want to save taxes, but, I'm trying to make a left on JFK Boulevard and Rutgers Plaza. That is tough, okay? That is really tough. And, 1980 maybe when the road was changed, okay, it never happened, okay? And there are other areas, too, as well, around the townships that need to be examined. Second one is larger retail. Come on, it's not just Rutgers Plaza where you can have a larger store. How about around 287, okay? I mean, I remember when 1970, when Grants was built, Rutgers Plaza, and then it became Kmart. Okay, at that time, 287 had maybe one or two trucks. That was it on the road. Traffic's a lot over there. There's a lot of traffic over there. People might want to come off and go to a store. Meanwhile, Franklin people don't have to go on 287 then if they can stay off 287 and just go to the stores. Why can't we have some larger retail around there, okay, and not just the big W warehouses, okay? Now, I'd like to also, since Mr. Hill and Mr. Dominic are here, I did not have a good, now you say go to the planning board, I didn't have a good time at the planning board. One of the variances that I think it was used 6 times was the truck apron, 130 feet is something that kept showing up at the planning board.
So this is not a question about the master plan.
Okay, well, let me just, okay, I'll cut off then,
Okay.
I'll stop. Okay. Then, in that case, okay, master plan. Maybe in the master plan there should be regulations that it should be said that the rules will be followed, okay, and that variances will be limited because
That's not the kind of document the master plan is.
Okay, well then maybe it should be that there should be more public participation in the before getting the master plan, before codifying it, because...
You're right, we agree. I will tell you that we encourage, during all of those hearings that we have for reexamination of the master plan and for master plan amendments, we almost beg people to come to give input. You've been to planning board meetings. You see the turnout that comes out for hearings. The turnout is even less for work sessions to discuss things like master plan amendments. I rally your residents. This is not something that we want to do in a vacuum. It's something that we want all of the public input on when it comes to all of these different things. I'm not going to sit here and debate the pros and cons of a giant shopping center at Easton Avenue and 287. Tonight's not the night to do that. But a work session of the planning board is.
Well, how about this? How about this? If the master plan called for redevelopment, not just on Hamilton Street, okay? How about that? If the master plan can call for that, not just Hamilton Street, because then otherwise what we got was private developers coming in and calling the shots. I'm talking about number 287 because there wasn't redevelopment as called for maybe by the master plan, which could have been called for. Okay, why wasn't there master plan redevelopment? Why wasn't it called for? Why only specifically Hamilton Street, okay?
Because there was no specific need to redevelop the area near 287. It was vital.
It wasn't vital, but it was said in the master plan years ago that something needs to be done, okay? And e-commerce, and Mayor Kramer ran on that in 2015. You ran on the fact that you wanted e-commerce. You said that you wanted e-commerce, and now we have all these warehouses because of that.
Excuse me, I never said that.
Yes, you did. It was centraljersey.com. I got it off centraljersey.com in an interview, that you wanted e-commerce, okay? And I have it. I printed it out.
I would love to see it, but I don't remember ever having an interview with Central Jersey.
Well, I got it off the internet, centraljersey.com.
I don't think I knew the words e-commerce back in 2015.
Okay, well, I guess I'll have to draw it up then, sir. That's all I can say. I mean, these things are a long time coming, I think.
Your time is up.
I'm sure it is. Well, so is yours.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Hi, Pete Blale, 40 Smith Road. I'm just unfortunately the only member of the community that seems to be here that's like under 40, which is really unfortunate because I'm a young person really interested in local government, and I really appreciate everybody taking the time on the council, the planning board, the manager to really answer the community's questions. So I work in finance and software development, and it's really technical, and all of this seems very technical as well. And when you put together these big processes, you have roadmaps, and you have the plan, which is like kind of like your source of truth, and then you also always have those things that are contingencies and changes that go along with everything. And I think what seems like a big part of the community's distress with the issue of the warehousing is the confusion around the processes and procedures and the reliance on them, and then the changes that take place kind of like on an ad hoc basis. So if you have certain applications being put forth, I believe there was a gentleman that said something about the accountability of variances. So how does that get memorialized? Like when you work on a software project, every single individual is held accountable for everything they do. And if something goes wrong, there's always a line that you can follow to go back to and kind of point to. So when you have your 20 to 40 applications per year and it deviates from the master plan, what does it look like from, and again, this is started as like a fact-finding endeavor for me, just trying to learn. So why, or is there accountability when it comes to like how the zoning board sort of negotiates those variances on an ongoing basis? Like up against the master plan? Like is all of it, not necessarily, because I know that there's an attorney involved too, so it's a policy document, but it's not necessarily law. So I'm confused about how a variance gets brought up, it differs from the master plan, and then you have...
actually, it differs from the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So the development ordinance, which encompasses all, so that's, Chapter 112 of our code. Okay. It's just the largest portion of our code, encompasses all of the zoning ordinances. You live on Smith Road, you're in an R40 zone.
Okay.
The R40 zone has permitted uses, conditional uses. If a use isn't a conditional or permitted use in your zone, then it's a zoning board application and it needs a use variance. So that all of those decisions are not in the master plan, all of those decisions are in the zoning ordinances. That's what governs the thing that you're talking about. The questions that you're asking. It's the zoning ordinances that govern that.
Okay. So I guess the 2016 plan, going back to, I suppose, the process, so you were here for the 2016 plan, and you went through all of the groups that are involved in all of that, and all of those meetings, there's always minutes for those, they're memorialized. Because I also work in data, too, where are all those reports memorialized on our township website? I can go back and look at all that stuff, and everybody goes back I can go back decades and look at all that stuff.
Yes,
People saying stuff's more detailed in the past, or
within the last probably since 2005 or so, I would say, all of the minutes of all of the different committees, the both boards, the council, those are all on the website. Starting probably around that same time frame, there's the video. So you can go to YouTube, and if you wish, you can watch 3-hour videos of planning board meetings from 5 years ago.
There's never any audio, though, that's functioning typically.
Yeah, but there are minutes, and then you did talk about accountability as far as on an application-by-application basis. There's also a resolution that spells out in a very detailed way of what that developer needs to do. So if the board approved it, subject to whatever, adding buffering or changing the driveway, whatever they had to do, that gets incorporated into that resolution that the board adopts. That's public. I don't think that's on the website, but it's public record if you ever wanted to see it. And the township staff, and we have an engineering consultant, also review the plans that come in after, and we make sure if the board said you need to do X, Y, and Z, we make sure they do X, Y, and Z. And we have processes in-house to make sure that they do that. I think you also brought up accountability as far as the master plan. And the way I read your question is basically, there is the planning board on a pretty continuous basis, as we're deliberating, the board, I should say, when the board is deliberating these applications, there are different issues that pop up. And there was something at the last meeting, I forget what it was, but the planning board basically said, I have it in my notes, but they said we really should look into that issue, because there was some issue that came up at the last meeting, and we should really look at our ordinance and see if we should change that, because that ordinance maybe doesn't make sense. Maybe that's what it was. There you go. Yeah, well, there you go.
There you go.
All the experts, including our engineer and their engineer, saying that width is just fine. Now, our ordinances actually requires too much, and that results in more pavement that is necessary. So maybe we should go back and look at. Oh, the other one was flag lots. That was the issue at the last meeting. We should look at maybe how our flag lots is when you have one lot behind the other. We have standards of how the driveway needs to be constructed, and there were some ideas that maybe we should change that. There's basically kind of an ongoing dialogue, and that's kind of the accountability, I would say, between the master plan and the development ordinance and the board's deliberation of applications. And from time to time, issues pop up, and maybe we should change that ordinance, because maybe we can do it in a better way.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I guess myself and the community included are just really also sort of confused, like how the communication takes.
Your time's up.
Oh, sorry. Thank you for the time. Have a good night.
You're welcome.
Parking spaces, 10 by 20, now they're not. Pavement.
Thought I would. I'm Theodore Chase, 159 Old Georgetown Road. Thought I would say a few things that's running out of people coming forward. One is about vision. I think operationally the township has had a vision, and it's exactly the vision we were recognized for when we were rated the 5th best town to live in our category in the country. And that is diversity, both diversity of population and diversity of what the township is. I remember saying many years ago, this is a town that has public housing and wheat farming. Doesn't quite, it's only corn and soybeans now, but otherwise, we've preserved farmland, we've preserved open space, but we also have space for organized athletics. The other thing is, I want to say a little bit about the history of the business and industry zone, which basically goes back to 1983. The planning board of that time recognized it was a very sparsely populated part of the town that could be zoned for business and industry, and basically increase the tax base and therefore decrease the taxes paid by ordinary residents. 1998, the councilwoman at that time pushed very hard for a further expansion of that zone, and that's when it got as far west as Randolph Road and Metlers Road, which is, she wanted more, to have it go down to Western Road. We pushed back from the planning board, resulted in a compromise, sort of splitting the area between Schoolhouse and Western Road. And certainly at that time and up until very recently, we didn't recognize warehousing as being that different from other types of light industry development. And we got light industry development in that zone with a certain amount of truck traffic, but it wasn't the problem that the warehousing has turned out to be. And one other final detail is the warehouses are built by builders. They build it, and then they expect that somebody will, like Amazon, will rent it. That's typically what happens, and it somewhat constrains the ability of the planning board to put constraints on how a given warehouse is going to be used. I think we all wish that we'd had the vision 2 years ago as people started staying home and ordering from Amazon to outlaw warehouses then. Unfortunately, we didn't have that vision. I don't think anybody had that vision. We didn't realize quite the effects that it had in truck traffic. And indeed, we would have thought that our now business and industry zone, M1, then was a good place because trucks could come directly off 287 and go to industry and warehouses without passing any residential development. The problem is there's always going to be boundaries between residential development and business and industry development, and that's where the friction is going to be. I've seen it at other places, say between L'Oreal and Gary Court, about whether L'Oreal was going to expand.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
I'll stop there.
Barbara Zabowski, 1935 Old Daimler Road. First, I want to thank everybody for being here. I think it's a good town hall meeting, and I hope you guys have more of them, at least the courage to have more. Because what I've heard tonight is a lot about accountability and just, more information being disseminated to the residents. And that's what I'm hearing from everybody here. And what I'm hearing from you guys is that you want more of it, more input from the residents, right? So that needs to happen as well. So maybe on the next newsletter, you guys can show how to register to get the emails on how.
That's in every newsletter.
Okay, great.
Notifications has been in newsletters since we've done notifications.
Yeah, I'm notified, so
Yeah,
that's
there you
fine.
go.
I'm notified.
Me too.
Okay. So, I think that council should definitely listen to the overall ideology that's happening, is that you can't go forward without an overall plan, especially for the master plan. You need to have, I'm not even going to say the word because everybody's thinking it's just a word, but it's not. It's a vision, right? So as we build these warehouses and as we approve these zonings and space, we do need more retail, right? So we should encourage that because that would help reduce our taxes and stuff. I don't know how that's, instead of building more apartments. But that stuff can be put in the master plan, and it should be accounted for. So the other thing is the environmental impact on what's happening when you guys approve and make exceptions to variances, is that wildlife is getting less and less space, and there are more and more deer just getting hit by cars. And 3 of my friends, their cars are totaled because, just in this last month, because of what's happening on Elizabeth Avenue. It did happen there, between, over by the ShopRite. Wildlife needs, open space to run around, and that's going to have an impact on the economy as well. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it.
Mr. Dominic, would you please address the idea of retail?
And I'm just going to chime in before you say anything. I've hit 1 deer in my life. I drive Elizabeth Avenue to and from home every day for the last 37 years. I hit 1 deer in my life. It was on Elizabeth Avenue by Elizabeth Avenue School, and that was in 1988. So it's been going on long before these buildings were built. It's a problem in New Jersey. We're very, very densely populated. That's all. He's going to address your other question.
Yeah, no,
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, my comment was that there's an uptick because of the displacement.
Well, I'm saying it's been a problem, and it continues to be a problem. We have too many deer.
Yeah, the issue with retail is not just an issue that goes to Franklin Township. It's a state issue. It's a countrywide issue. There's very few areas in the country, except for areas that are having tremendous amount of new residential growth, that are having anything but their retail components disappearing. And there are a couple different reasons for it. One of it is that we talk about e-commerce. The second is what happened in the last couple of years with COVID. That accelerated the decrease in the brick and mortar retail. What it also did, unfortunately, to Franklin, we have some older centers. We also have centers that are considered second or third tier retail. Some of the centers on Easton, some of the centers on Route 27 are not the most desirable locations. And retail comes down to location, location, location. So unfortunately, we have a harder time attracting any type of retail, except for there's certain destination types of retail. If you go to the mall, there are probably 24 stores that are open in the mall. You go to Route 1 and you go to any shopping center, it's the same all over. So it's about the change in how we shop. And we talk about all the different warehousing that come. That's the direct result of the death of so much retail, is because we all go home, and what do? We go on Amazon and everything else, and we have something delivered to our house the next day or the day after. So we have the zones that are properly zoned for that. We have developers who are willing to keep their retail centers. The problem is they can't rent them. And that's just a fact. That's just a fact of life right now. And like I said, it's in almost the entirety of this country. Unless you go to some of the areas, in Florida that, in 5 years they're getting 10,000 new homes. You need something to support that. Unfortunately, like I said, the majority of the retail in this country is downsizing. So that's where we're at.
I did something. I went Christmas shopping on Saturday with my wife, and we went to the Bridgewater Commons, which was built as one of the premier indoor shopping malls on the east coast of this country. And 1/3 of the lower floor of that mall is vacant. So, and 1/3 of the lower floor, and then the entire anchor of Lord & Taylor still continues to be empty. It is a problem that not just here, like Vince said, it's not just Franklin, it's not just New Jersey. It's a shift in the way we as consumers consume.
Anyone else wishing to speak? So you spoke already. We only speak once. Yes, we can only speak once.
Getting late, I'm getting tired. It's getting late now.
See, he's getting tired. He doesn't want everyone to speak more than once.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. Jim Johnston, 34 Norwich Place. Mr. Healy, in your original presentation, you talked briefly about in 2020, the M1 zone and the M2 zone was consolidated into the BI zone. That's what my question is, okay? Now, we have asked you a question about this to the town council before, but I think that you're best qualified. What was the reason for you doing that? Because this is 2 years ago, at the town council meeting on what was it, December 8th, 2020, you appeared in the town council and you asked them to pass a new ordinance to change the M1 zoning and the M2 zoning over to BI zoning. And you said the purpose of that was to simplify the zoning. I think that's what you said. But whatever the reason was, in the 2 years since that ordinance was passed, we have seen a huge influx of warehouse companies coming into Franklin and buying up all the land. Now, my question is that a cause and effect relationship, or was that just a coincidence? Or did that ordinance that you asked them to pass, did that have something to do with it? I mean, is it because the BI zone allowed warehousing, whereas the M1 zone didn't allow it?
So, yeah, there's a few questions in there. So when the ordinance that was adopted in 2020 consolidated 3 zones, consolidated the M1, the M2, and the corporate business zone. The M1 and the M2 zones, the M stands for manufacturing. It was a light manufacturing zone that permitted warehouses and have for decades. The one zone that did not permit warehousing is the corporate business zone. So I'm going to answer your question, okay? What the main change, the main thing that ordinance did was to allow warehousing in the former corporate business zone. So for example, Atrium Drive, Davidson, that area was where you see the larger office buildings and some hotels. That area now permits warehousing. The rest of the M1 zone all over that area of town, Veronica, permitted warehousing before and continued in the BI zone. The intensity of development, and that's measured by 3 key ways, okay? The percentage of the property that can be covered by buildings, percentage of the property that can be covered by pavement, and I previously mentioned floor area ratio, which is the amount of building mass, the ratio of square footage of the building to the square footage of the property, was unchanged from the M1 zone to the BI zone. So it did not change the intensity of permitted development. So if you ask the question about causation, to the degree that there are, if we have a few of these warehouse applications are in what was the former corporate business zone, to that degree there would be causation, because again, that area did not permit warehousing before. To the degree that the warehousing and the bulk of it is in the former M1 and M2 zones, it's a change in name.
Okay, so even if you had not passed that ordinance, we would still be seeing a lot of warehouses coming in, let's say, I know you said I can't talk about specifics, can I? Huh? I'm talking about the area around Canal Walk, okay?
Well, I'm saying content.
Use your mic.
Years.
And the reason for that, I would say the same thing, that I think we would have the same amount, because it's the societal issues or changes that we just talked about a few minutes ago. There's the impact to the retail market, And the main thing that was the main reason for that change in 2020 to the BI zone was a substantial decrease to the office market. The same thing is happening. The office, the way that the offices work, people are working from home. There's no more cubicle farms anymore. People only come in maybe 1 or 2 days a week, and they're working from home. These office buildings are empty. And the township was recognizing, we have a large area of this town that in the 80s, all of these office buildings, these huge office parks sprung up, and now they're emptying. What are we going to do? So that was the main change in 2020. And I think because of these larger society issues, we'd be here today, regardless of that BI zone.
Thank you. Anyone else? I see no one else wishing to speak. So that, did you have something to say?
No, I was going to say, is this second that, or is it?
It's not a council meeting. That ends the township meeting. Town hall meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming out.